Hello, everybody. It's Michael Hollands once again for Sound of the Movies. Today, I have the pleasure to be joined by writer, director, and producer Charles Shyer, who has written the screenplays for, produced, and/or directed films such as Private Benjamin, Irreconcilable Differences, Baby Boom, Father of the Bride, I Love Trouble, Alfie, The Parent Trap, The Noel Diary, and many more. It is my pleasure to welcome Charles Shyer.
Hi.
It's great to have you on my show. Thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. It's good. Okay, great. No, I'm happy to do it.
Charles, at first I would like to talk about the beginnings of your career. As I understand, a long time ago in 1966, you were the second AD on a Norman Jewison film called The Russians Are Coming. Now that's a long time ago. And
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
And what was your job on this picture, and what are your memories of the legendary director Norman Jewison?
Well, I was like, I didn't even remember how old I was. I was the youngest at that time. I was in kind of a version of the DGA training program. It was just in its embryonic stages. And I think I was the youngest member of the Directors Guild at that time. We went up to Fort Bragg in Northern California to shoot the movie, and I was the second AD, so I wasn't really I was under the second AD, so I was a trainee, and I like Norman very much. I have a couple of memories. I remember that we were shooting a scene with who was it, Theodore Bickel or someone like that. On the boat, and it had a lot of stars in that movie, like people like Alan Arkin, who had never done a movie before, and it was pretty cool. But I had an idea after they shot the scene. Because I didn't know what I was doing. I had an idea for a joke or something that I came up with. And I went up to Norman and I whispered it to him, and he got kind of mad at me and said, let me tell you something. If you have any more of these ideas, tell me while I'm shooting it. Don't tell me after I've shot it, because it's a really good joke and I could have used it. And so that was impactful to me, that he scolded me but appreciated me. They were very tight on the budget, and they asked me to, as because I was like 21 years old or 22, to make sure that the crew only took one milk at lunch. So I had to stand there. They wanted me to stand there and say, no, you can only have one milk. And I said, I'm not going to do that. And they said, what do you mean? I was really young, and I said, I'm not telling these guys they can't have more than one milk. I'll go home. You send me home, fire me. I'm not going to do it. And I don't know what the upshot. I didn't do it. I refused to do it because it was so fucking ridiculous. And how much are you going to save? $20? I mean, it's stupid. So anyway, those are my two memories of. And I thought the movie was kind of cute, and I like Norman. Norman's done some good work.
Gradually you started to work your way up, and at some point I believe you also were the assistant of Garry Marshall, and then you wrote some episodes of The Odd Couple, and you were or also served as the associate producer at some point, if I recall correctly. So was your first impression of the business exactly as you had hoped it would be?
Well, no, I mean, well, for me, you have to understand, my dad was in the movie business. So he was a director, assistant director, a writer and stuff. So when I was a little kid, pretty much from the time I was about 7 or 8 years old, I would go to movie sets on the weekends with my dad. He would, because they worked 6 days a week in those days. And like I would say probably many Saturdays I would go with my dad to work, and and he worked on a lot of Westerns. So for me as an 8-year-old kid, I get to ride the horses. I get to, I mean, they treated me like so sweetly and special the prop men would give me a holster and a gun to wear and a badge, and I get to ride the horses, and they had these miraculously great lunches that I thought were fabulous. So I had a great time every weekend. But the thing that also for me was when I was 10 years old, I knew what a key grip was. I knew what a dolly grip was because I grew up on movie sets. So it was a very, very natural thing for me to go into the movie. So it wasn't really something that threw me once I started doing it. I never was nervous about being a director or anything like that because I knew the thing so well. I also knew I really probably couldn't have done a lot of other stuff. I'm not going to be a doctor or a lawyer. I'm better off, I could have been maybe written for politicians or done advertising or written for TV or something like that, but or movies. But that was about it. I knew I was limited. I was a horrible student. I went to work for Garry Marshall and Jerry Belson after I did Russians Are Coming, and they were just they were like such an eye-opening experience for me. And Gary, they used to let me sit in on story conferences and stuff. Well, first of all, I was the second assistant, like I was on The Russians Are Coming. And then what I asked them after I realized that they were such powerful people, or could be, I asked them, and this is I asked them if I could be their assistant. And so I took a huge pay cut, like half the money. And they said yes. And I became their assistant. And, and I did everything for them. I washed their car. I got their cars washed. I did their Christmas shopping. I got them fudgesicles and stuff like that. But the trade-off was I got to sit in the story conferences. And, and again, like I did with Norman, I would tell Gary and Jerry my ideas after the story conferences. And luckily, Gary said to me, I think you have really good ideas. And he started to mentor me. And I ghost wrote a script for him for a TV show. And then he became my manager, and he was really my guiding light. I mean, without Gary, I don't know that I would have made it. But Gary used to work on all my stuff with me and help me. And he was kind of my mentor and my springboard to get into the business on a big way.
The first script you wrote, which also became a hit, was Smokey and the Bandit in the 70s. Once you have a hit, I imagine that can open some doors for you. So how did everything progress from that point on, having had a hit?
Yeah. Well, with Smokey, they gave us the script, and I thought I hated it. I thought it was awful. Really, and also you have to understand, I'm from the San Fernando Valley. I mean, I grew up in Studio City. I didn't know what an 18-wheeler was, what a CB radio was. I had no freaking idea any of this shit. But it sounded like a good thing, and Burt was a big star then, Burt Reynolds, and so my partner and I, we did a rewrite, and it did become a big hit. The movie made $200 million. I don't know, made a fortune, and I got paid $7,500. The craft service guy made more than me on the movie, but it kind of did give me an entree to other jobs. I worked with Jack Nicholson on Goin South, which he directed, which was a great experience. And then I went on and did a movie called House Calls with Glenda Jackson and Walter Matthau. So it did kind of spring me out, although when I saw the movie, this is what it's interesting. When I saw the movie when it came out, I thought, like when I read the screenplay, I thought it was really a stupid movie. I didn't love it. But then they had a 40th anniversary or something like a couple of years ago. And I went and I took my kids to see it and I hadn't seen it in ages. And I watched it, and I realized why it was a big hit, because it did work. Bert was really good, really good. Sally was great. Jerry Reed, he wrote some really good songs. The movie worked. And that's, I think, the main thing, what you realize. Do movies work or not work? And when they work, they're usually successful. And that movie really worked. And so, I've been lucky to be on some movies that worked, and I've been on some that didn't work as well, which isn't great.
Charles, you directed your first film in 1984, and it was called Irreconcilable Differences. And
Right.
if you were to compare Hollywood's, back then versus today, which aspects of filmmaking did you find more appealing back then, or do you find it more appealing today in terms of craftsmanship, the whole hierarchy, and so on?
No, I thought it was better back then, because it was less bottom line, it was less corporate. There was You were given more. Although I have to say, my last movie I did, the Noel Diary for Netflix, which I did this past Christmas, they totally left me alone creatively. But I think I was a little bit the exception, because I know there's a lot of interference from studios and stuff today. But back then, when we did Irreconcilable, now it was very low budget. The movie, even back then, it was, God, I don't even remember how much it cost, but it was, we were pretty much left alone to make our movie. And I guess I liked it better back then, but maybe it's like an old guy saying the good old days. I don't really know. It's harder to get movies made today. I know that. It's much harder.
That's a fact. I mean, I hear all these stories about good directors and directors who really struggle to get their films made. It's always a money issue, or the film is in development for many, many years, and nobody really wants to pull the trigger and wants to greenlight anything. And I think that's also due to the whole Marvel machinery and studios wanting to take fewer and fewer risks, as they believe that something that worked 10, 20, 30 years ago will work 2 years from now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Maybe this has always been a complaint. I'm not sure, but are movies dumbed down? Are they dumber today? I mean, Marvel movies are not. I know. Was there one called Doctor Strange, or was them? Well, I saw that with my 17-year-old son. And I think it's maybe the only Marvel movie I've seen, because they just don't interest me. And from what I can tell, because I see little snippets of it, because my kids watch it sometimes, but they all seem like the same story to me, and they're bombastic. Where there is no. Well, I was talking about this with a producer yesterday. That where's the Cuckoo's Nest today? Where's Godfather? Where is there were so many great movies like in the 70s and the 80s that probably couldn't get made today, and they were great movies. They won Oscars. So I don't know. Like, what movie won I guess that I know what movie won last year, but you forget which movies win Oscars today. They're not that memorable. Yeah.
And Charles, I would like to go back to the 1980s. Before you directed Irreconcilable Differences, you had a hit movie called Private Benjamin. You co-wrote,
Right.
you co-wrote the screenplay with Nancy Meyers, your partner at the time. Howard Sieve directed it. You also produced it. So it became a hit. 3 Academy Award nominations: Best Screenplay, Best Lead Actress, for instance, for Goldie Hawn. As I understand, you really intended to be a producer on that picture. You really fought for that because you felt that it was a wise decision to make in order to really, let's say, make sure the screenplay is properly presented and directed.
We wrote the script on spec, and Nancy had worked for Ray Stark, who was a producer, and she had met Goldie. And so we went ahead and we pitched the idea when we were working on it to Goldie, and she really liked it. We wrote the script, And we were very lucky. Well, we had a lot of very serendipitous things happen to us, but we wrote the script. She liked it. So it was a spec screenplay, but we went out as a spec screenplay with Goldie Hawn attached, who had come off of Foul Play, which was a big hit. And but our deal was, we said, we got a lot of offers on the script, but we said we're not selling it if we're not the producers. We handcuffed ourselves to the movie. So we refused. We owned it, so we refused to sell it to anybody unless we were the sole producers. And they had no choice, so Warner Brothers finally stepped up and said, "Okay, yeah." But a lot of people, by the way, turned down Private Benjamin. A lot of people, with Goldie attached. They didn't see, because it had back then it was a feminist kind of movie, and people were nervous about that. They thought it was too maybe, I don't know what the word would be, too maybe arch, or too much in your face, the feminism. But we really believed in it, and so did Goldie. And I think that's the reason, or one of the big reasons, it became such a huge hit, And the movie holds up. I've watched it, the parts of it. I hate watching my own movies, but I've watched parts of it, over the years, and I think it's really good. And she gave an extraordinary performance. So did Eileen Brennan. They both gave great performances.
Yeah. Some good actors in there also. Armand Assante, I hope I pronounced his name correctly. He did a fine job too. And he had Bill Conti. He wrote the score. Yeah. He also would work with you later on Baby Boom, but let's get into that later on. And when it comes to your first directing gig on Irreconcilable Differences, you were also teamed up, of course, with a seasoned DP. I believe it was William Fraker. And that used to be the norm. A first-time director needs to be teamed up with relatively seasoned people, production designer, the DP, and other producers. What do you remember about going into your first job as a director? Because I think many people would be frozen stiff at the very thought of directing your first film.
Well, again, because I'd been on movie sets my whole life, it really didn't intimidate me that much. But, I knew Billy Fraker's work, and I thought Heaven Can Wait was a fabulous job. And I knew that Warren Beatty and Buck Henry hadn't directed a movie before, and that really looked good. So we met with Billy. Had done Bullet. He'd done and he was a great guy. He didn't let me fuck it up. I storyboarded, and I always have everything in that movie. So I had every shot. Not that I do it myself, but I worked out I was very, 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 underlined, very well prepared for this movie. So I had storyboarded it. And I was Nancy and I were really diligent about who we hired on the movie. So we had Ida Random. She was the production. People were really, really top people who had great style. And Nancy and I always felt that we had good taste. And so I think that's another part of it. If you're confident, in picking the wardrobe and picking the production design and the set dressing and stuff, which I'm very confident about, it solves a lot of problems. And Fraker protected me. I loved him. He was just a great guy. We'd drive to work every morning together, and we'd go over the shots together, and we'd drive home, together. Billy Wilder said a great thing, and this is really true. One of the problems with being a film director is, at the end of the day, on your way home in the car, you figure out how you should have shot the scene that you shot that day, but it's too late. Why didn't I do that? Oh shit, I should have done this. But with Billy, he pretty much covered me. So the movie turned out, I think, it was okay. I liked Irreconcilable. We saw it again. They did a screening at the American Cinematheque. Did a screening of Irreconcilable about 3 years ago, and Nancy and I were nervous about seeing it, but we went. and I thought it was. I was happy with it, which is really weird, because it's watching your own movie is after a year is not a great thing usually.
Thank you, Charles. And as I mentioned before, you write, you produce, and you direct. What do you think are some of the biggest skills any director or producer should have when it comes to the business, when it comes to handling the crew and the people you work with, in order to really produce something meaningful, in order to really have a good atmosphere going on set?
Well, it's like being a basketball coach, or you have to motivate people and motivate and appreciate. I think are two of the words I would use. You have to appreciate that people are killing themselves. Making movies is fucking hard, man, and it's long hours, and it's I mean, you want them to the people in the crew and the cast to feel that they're doing something really worthwhile, and that maybe a decade from now will still be appreciated and will work and won't seem like a movie of the moment. I think that's really important. I think as broad an education as you can have is great. I mean, as I said, I was a horrible student and didn't do well, but I really studied movies. I really knew movies. I read every possible screenplay I could read that was a good screenplay. I watched every movie. I knew every movie, the Preston Sturges, Ernst Lubitsch, Billy Wilder. I mean, I was encyclopedic on movies. And that was really my college education. I educated myself because I love movies so much, and you have to be passionate. And it's a weird thing. I'm not sure how you define it, but I think you have to know within yourself. You have to believe that you're not a poser, that you do have talent. I always thought I was a pretty good writer, and I thought my ideas were pretty good. And when I starting with Gary or even Norman Jewison, when people would appreciate my ideas and stuff, it gave me confidence to move on.
I would love to talk about Baby Boom. I rewatched it just a couple of days ago. It's a sweet and lovely 80s movie. I really like it a lot. And I think this was your first collaboration with Diane Keaton. She was the lead in the film. And I'm not sure anymore. Was this the film when the studio had second thoughts about casting her, or was that a Father of the Bride?
Both. Well, we offered the movie to Goldie at first, and we talked with her and Kurt to play the Sam Shepard part. I don't know why Goldie turned it down. She didn't do it, and we met with her. I remember meeting at her house. Later, she told us she thought she made a huge mistake turning it down. And did we go to Diane Keaton next? I'm not sure. But the studio was hesitant because she'd not had a hit movie in a while. I mean, this is a woman who was in Annie Hall. So what are we talking about? I mean, she's a great actress, but she was so fabulous in that movie. She just really worked. And yeah, I like the movie. I think it's good. It's they really didn't want her in Father of the Bride. That was a big fight, Okay. It's weird. They had ideas of people who were just not half as good an actress as she is,
Unbelievable.
Well, it's not unbelievable because they're not creative people. These heads, I mean, that's the truth, It's like Mike Nichols had this quote. I forget exactly what it was, but he said that when an executive gives a note on a script, he thinks it's a creative act. And to give a note is not creative, and to have an opinion is not being creative. They just, I don't know, man. It's, well, it's always, this is not anything new. This has always been, a problem. They didn't want to make E.T. They don't know, but how do you know? It's a crapshoot anyway, I guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, basically, the bottom line is you can never tell if your movie is going to be successful or if it's going to tank. You can certainly have a hunch. you will know at the end of the day. And to me, box office numbers have never been a guideline for me because, of course, you direct the film, you produce it. Of course, there's a lot at stake, so you want your movie to make money. But to me, if a film makes $1 billion, that doesn't mean it's a good film. And if a film tanks and if it makes $200,000, it doesn't mean it's a bad film. Father of the Bride was a huge hit, and it spawned a sequel, Father of the Bride Part 2. It's a lovely movie, lovely movies, and the first one was a remake based on the 1950s classic, I believe. And I've seen it 100 times. And if you look at the cast, if you look at Steve Martin, Diane Keaton, Martin Short, and the other supporting actors, it's like a match made in heaven. You couldn't picture this film with any different actors, and it's just, it's lovely. And to me, in my book, one of the best remakes ever produced and directed. What are your favorite memories of the making of this comedy classic?
I really like the movie, and it does work, but and I think it works because I guess it works because the original works so well, and but Steve going into that part added a whole other dimension and flavor to the movie. And then I think Nance and I have a way of writing that kind of naturally, because we're such huge fans of movies of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, we can get that sensibility into a modern screenplay. And so it's which I think is not an easy task. And I think that was one of the things that we were the perfect writers for that. Steve was the perfect actor. Marty, who was a friend of Steve's, just really, it's quintessential Marty Short, maybe the best thing he's ever done. And then Diane is, of course, brilliant. And discovering Kimberly Williams was a great thing for us, because Nance and I saw a lot of actresses who were on the, Gwyneth was on it, Scarlett Johansson. We read all these women who would become movie stars, but they just weren't exactly right for the part. They didn't have the kind of innocence that we wanted. And Kim was a student at Northwestern who came and hadn't really done anything before. But we felt that she had the essence of the character. And it was very different than Elizabeth Taylor in the original, but that she was, for me and Nancy, the right person for that role. So we got, you get like, it's all, it's like Hitchcock said, once you've cast it right, you're kind of you're kind of invincible. If you do cast it right. If you cast it wrong, you're fucked. You can't. There's no way around that. And I've done that a couple times. And you're stuck. You're stuck. You can try to make it better. You can try to hide the the stuff that doesn't work, but it's still gonna never ring the bell.
Which film do you think wasn't cast properly?
Well, I Love Trouble was a movie we made with Julia Roberts and Nick Nolte, and they really didn't like each other, and that turned out to be a nightmare experience. I don't want to say the other movie that I feel was miscast, because I don't want to cast aspersions on the actor, but I have another movie where the lead actor wasn't right for the part. I cast this person in the part because the person was red hot at the moment, which is always a mistake, because it has nothing to do with your movie, and it's listening to producers who they don't have the same ultimate goal that you have, it's like you said. I agree with you. I'd rather make a movie that worked and made no money than make a movie that didn't work that made billions. I mean, that's me, but I'm not a producer. That's not what I do.
And Charles, as I understand, I Love Trouble had various problems, besides, Nick Nolte and Julia Roberts not really getting along. Elmer Bernstein, he was the composer, and he apparently was let go because the score didn't work as you thought it should. And then David Newman had to step in. And as I recall, Dave had about 2 weeks.
I remember Nance and I went, like, I mean, I don't know, it was the first day of the scoring session or not, but we went onto the scoring stage with Elmer, and I knew this guy didn't want to hear what we had to say. And, we're the writers, producers, and director, and it's our movie. And he got very uppity about, if we had a minor suggestion, and I just said to myself, and I can't do this. I can't let somebody else run the ship. I got to have my opinion. And we fired him. We fired Elmer Bernstein. Yeah, that was a big move, and it cost a lot of money. And David Newman came in and did a really good job, but it's like putting a Band-Aid over a cancer, and it ain't gonna help. The movie didn't work, because they had no chemistry.
I must say, despite the lack of chemistry, I think it's a nice film. And I'm not saying that because you directed and wrote and produced it. I'm saying that because it's my honest opinion. I still enjoy the film. I really do.
We sold that script overnight, by the way.
Really?
We wrote it. Yeah. We sold it overnight. Julia's agent read it overnight, and we sold it the next day. So it was a very hot screenplay. It just, I don't know, and it cost a lot of money. The movie cost too much money, took too long to shoot. It was an ordeal. It was like, it turned into a prison sentence, really. That's how I felt about it. We just weren't enjoying ourselves. And I think we knew early on, me and Nancy, that it wasn't going to be a successful movie. And we went to our agent and to the studio and said, we don't feel it's working. This was after about 7 or 8 days, and they wanted to keep going. And I think it would have been smart because Julia and Nick just didn't get along. And that's unusual, but what can you do?
I want to talk a little bit about music because I also love Alan Silvestri, and Alan had written the scores for Father of the Bride. And I understand Alan came in really late on that project. I'm not sure. Did you have another composer at first?
No, I don't. It's a good question. He did come in late, and I'm not sure why he came in late. I don't believe we had another composer. We may have. Nancy would know, but I don't remember. But he did come in late. And I remember, what I do remember pretty lucidly is that I forget where we were exactly. I remember him playing that theme for us on the piano, which was, for me, that's a big thing with composers. To write a beautiful melody or a beautiful theme is so huge and so important and so rare that I remember he sat down at the piano and played this for us, and both Nance and I said, it's just fucking great. And it worked. He just got it. And so that theme became, it's a beautiful, I think, musical theme in the movie, and it's very emotional, and it ties into the movie perfectly. So it was great. Yeah, he's a very good composer and a good guy too. I like him very much.
Yeah, the whole main title was just brilliant, and the way that the music was put up against the picture or written to picture by Alan, it's just magical, and you don't get that on a regular basis in today's film world. So it's always nice to re-experience that, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, the DP John Lindley and I worked out that title sequence, and it was a great marriage of music and visuals. And it worked. And we had that big oversized champagne glass that we used at the end there, the titles and stuff. We just had a lot of. It was, you know what it is? It's preparation. It's been trying to be very diligent and think out things to the minutia. So you protect yourself so things don't go wrong. And we knew that the opening of that movie was really important to set the tone. We worked really hard on that, yeah. And again, it's like, you say you don't know if a movie's a hit or not, which is true. But with a movie like Father of the Bride, we had previews, and the previews went through the roof. It's like with Parent Trap. They were like Lion King numbers. But we on Father of the Bride, it had previewed so well that the studio relaxes. And if you need more money, they're confident that we're going to have a hit movie. So they loosen the purse strings and they let us kind of do this elaborate title sequence. And, if you perform in a preview, I don't know, the whole preview thing today is we didn't do previews on my last movie because it was for Netflix. So I don't know. It's a different world,
And I know you did, or Nancy did, Father of the Bride 3-ish, the 30 minutes short film, also for Netflix. Is there even the slightest chance of ever getting Father of the Bride Part 3 with the old ensemble?
I don't think so. I think we did. I think we've kind of had it. We did that. I don't think there's much left to say. We talked about, at one time we had an idea for doing Part 3 where Kieran Culkin was going to get married. He was the little boy. And what we had was that he found a guy that he fell in love with, and he was going to marry. We were going to have a gay wedding. But, and it was a good idea. We worked it out, but it just never felt, because you couldn't have Steve, then you get into, is he going to be upset that he's getting married, and then you're going to think he's upset because he's marrying a gay guy, and it just didn't seem to go together. So it's not something. Also, I don't really want to go back anymore. I'd rather go forward. I have a couple of movies I want to do, and we're putting them together now. So
And Charles, you did Alfie, I believe, in 2004, and as I understand, you had some reservations about doing another remake, but somehow you were convinced. What went on there, and what prompted you to still tackle the film?
You know what it is? I think that that we thought, Elaine Pope and I thought that it was a movie that that we could bring up to date, and it would be interesting and would add. Again, it's kind of like I said with Father of the Bride, we could bring it up to date and have a whole new twist on it, and that was, that was our feeling, that if we had a new perspective on the character, that it would work. And then, of course, we got Jude, which was great, which was really an incentive. And I don't know, we just felt pretty positive that it was a story that was still relevant, and I really like that movie. I like Alfie a lot, and of course I had Mick and Dave doing the music, which didn't hurt.
And John Powell too.
John Powell, yeah. But working with Mick Jagger was, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like a milestone in your life, It's like it was amazing. I work with Mick every day for a couple of weeks, and it was just, it was like a dream.
I really like Alfie. It's a great film. Jude Law was fantastic. I think it's really hard to produce a remake which is meaningful. I mean, remakes are a dime a dozen, basically, also these days. But I feel certain remakes even surpass their original. Many films, or also films which you produced and directed, to me, these are timeless. maybe, Father of the Bride or Alfie will be remade again 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And I think it takes a tremendous amount of effort to really come up with something or a concept which will be timeless. Of course, you don't know that when you shoot the film, but I think it's a nice compliment.
Yeah. Well, they made another Father of the Bride with Andy Garcia. I know. I didn't see it. It kind of came and went, I guess.
I would rather watch the old ones over and over again.
Right.
And speaking of great remakes, I love The Parent Trap. I know you didn't direct it, Nancy Meyers did, but you also co-wrote it and you produced it. How long did it take to really land on Lindsay Lohan? I mean, what a tremendous task for this 11-year-old girl to pull off two parts, the different accents, and wow, amazing part.
Yeah, she was brilliant. Well, we I remember when we did screen tests with I don't know, maybe 6 girls, maybe more, maybe it was more girls. And I remember when we were doing them, because she did her screen test with Dennis and Quaid, and I think maybe she was second or third kid up the day we were doing it. And the minute she did it, I told Nancy, forget it. It's over. There's nobody's going to be this good. She was just so perfect. And she did a great job in the movie. And she was a wonderful actress. I'm sorry that things didn't go as well for her when she got in some bad publicity and stuff and things. But I agree. She was fantastic in the movie. And it really worked because of her. And I like that movie a lot. That movie is really one that people like a lot. And I think it's in large part because of her. And I think we wrote a really good screenplay too. Yeah, it was good. It was a movie that worked. Yeah. That was another one when we went to previews. Like I said, it was just huge in the previews. I mean, people just loved it. And we knew we had a real shot with that movie.
I would like to at least briefly talk about the advantages and disadvantages, directing your own script versus somebody else's. I know you also directed The Affair of the Necklace, which also featured really good actors in there. Hilary Swank, for instance, Jonathan Pryce. What can you tell me about this process? Finding your way around somebody else's script and bringing it to life.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing, and it's the only movie I've ever done that I didn't write. But I worked with a writer, John Sweet, a lot, and we went away. I remember we went to Montecito and worked on the script, so I definitely got my hand in there a lot. Like there's a whole narration that we added later with Brian Cox doing the narration because it wasn't quite working the movie, and so I got involved as a writer a lot. Not that I wanted to take credit or anything, but I realized it's when you write the script yourself. For me, this is me personally. When you write the script yourself, an actor can't ask you a question that you don't know how to answer. With Affair of the Necklace, and I knew that pretty well, but again, it's like Smoking the Bandit. I'm a guy from Studio City, California, and 18th century France is not something I knew a lot about, so I had to jam and study and try to understand, people are people, but I tried to understand the motivations and stuff. And I don't know, it was a little bit more difficult than if I'd written it myself. I wasn't as comfortable as I would have been if I had written it, But I would never write a movie about Marie Antoinette. I'm not gonna, that's not something that would, come to mind,
But I thought, Charles, that the film was put together really well. And also you have Brian Cox in there, who I think is a tremendous actor. The cinematography was very good by Ashley, it was Ashley, right?
Yeah, Ashley Rowe. Yeah,
Ashley Rowe, whom you've worked with 3 or 4 times.
Four times, yeah.
The story was told really, really well, and the music was great by David Newman again. So,
yeah,
I really enjoyed the story and how you pulled off the whole picture.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, I really did.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good scenes in that movie. You know, I'm
Absolutely.
not sure the movie as a whole works 100%, but I think there's a lot of really good stuff in it, and it's visually very good. And yeah, I'm happy I made it.
And Charles, if we still have some time left, I would like to talk about your collaboration with Netflix, because your latest film, the Noel Diary, was released on Netflix. And how did you get involved with Netflix? I hear it's a really great group of people, and it's a great place to work for.
Well, they came to me with a script that was based on a novel, and I read the script. And the problem is that I had previously, I kind of like wanted to do a movie that took place at Christmas because it's a perennial, and so they come back every year. It's like a kids movie, you get it's a genre that I thought, well, gee, I'd like to get into. But I read a lot of scripts from Netflix, and I turned them all down. And finally, I got this one, and I didn't love the script. I didn't think it was, a, you know, uh, but I thought if I turn down another movie, they're never going to come back to me. So I figured out some ideas I had for how to make it more my kind of movie. And I went in and I talked to the people at Netflix and told them my feelings. And they gave me the job, and from there on, I kind of went off on my own with Rebecca Connor, who I wrote it with, who's a friend of mine who I've written 2 or 3 scripts with. And we kind of made it our own. We took the genesis of the novel and the screenplay and turned it into something that we really liked. And from there on, it was a joy. I mean, Netflix was I would say the best place I've ever worked in terms of leaving me alone creatively. If you stayed within budget and you didn't, they didn't second guess me on casting. Um, they loved Justin Hartley, Barrett, who was, on a TV show, but nobody really knew Barrett, and they were just really, they trusted me. They were supportive, and I think the movie, I like the movie very much. I think it really works.
It does, yeah.
We shot it in 26, 27 days, which is really jamming. But because we rehearsed pretty thoroughly, and because Justin and Barrett and Bonnie and Essence and James Remar, it's like 5 people in the movie. And so it's really concentrated. And we just, again, I storyboarded everything. I was very well prepared. So we just jammed. But I just had dinner with Justin 2 nights ago, and we just were talking about it was a movie without real problems, which is so unusual. I'm knocking wood right now while I'm touching, because it was just a really good experience. And I have to say, I love working for Netflix. The experience was good, and I love the movie. So,
would you say this was one of the best experiences of your career?
yeah, I would say this, Father of the Bride. I loved Irreconcilable, making that movie. I've liked most of them. Some movies have been hard, but I love making movies. I love it. It's all encompassing. You have another family. You move from your family to another family, and you live with that family for 3 months, and then you have to say goodbye. But for me, it's because since I was a little kid, I've been on movie sets, and so it always seemed like home to me.
I know some people feel that rom-coms or romantic comedies can be a bit corny or cheesy. And how do you deal with that aspect of filmmaking? I seem to recall an interview where you said you are really specific about that, and you do not want your films to be corny. So how do you work around that? How do you manage to deliver a lovely story and a love story, or a story about people, without being on the nose or intrusive or corny?
Well, I think part of it is to well, Nance and I never really went for writing jokes, and we tried always to, I guess, to try to make our movies real, I think that's the thing. I mean, not to be over the top, not to be corny. I guess corny is the word. We tried to always keep it grounded in reality. I mean, Marty Short's way out there, but we tried to give him a little humanity. I don't know, man. You just, I don't know. You do what you think you can do and get away with, but it's a hard genre to pull off. It's to not be cliche and not be, and also, you have to remember a lot of people in romantic comedies aren't funny. The actors aren't funny, which is a problem. I mean, good romantic comedies like Sleepless in Seattle have two people who are real funny and a movie that's grounded in reality, and that's why it's seminal. That's why that happens. So it's a hard question, and it's a good question, but I don't have a good answer.
No problem. No worries. But speaking of Martin Short, I was going to ask you, because his accent in those Father of the Bride movies is just phenomenal and hilarious. Did you give him a tremendous amount of leeway on that? I mean, did he at times or partially come up with that accent, or was his character written?
Yeah. The accent is really pretty much Marty, but there were extremes of it, So I remember I don't know, the first day of dailies, but the studio called us when they saw Marty, and they were freaked out. They said, "You can't understand what he's saying." And we said, "Well, okay." So what we do on all of his stuff, we would do 2 or 3 different versions where you understood him not at all or very little, where you kind of understood him, and then where you could understand him. I would say 99% of the time in the movie, it's where you can't understand him. The ones the studio hated are what's in there, and that's what the audience loved. So, but I understand why they were upset, or are nervous about it, because it was extreme. He was out there, man. But it worked, and Marty's kind of a genius. So you were lucky, yeah.
So amazing. When they talk about the wedding cake and it costs $1,200, and how he pronounces it's a
cock.
It's a very reasonable price for a cock of the smart. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good impersonation. Yeah. He, he was great. He was a big addition.
Did you ever have, or did you and Nancy ever have final cuts on any of your movies?
We never didn't have it, to be honest with you. Nobody ever told us what to do. It's like with the Noel Diary, because all the movies are that I made alone and that I made with Nance were we did the final cut. The studio, that's a big deal to come in and they can have a lot of opinions, but they don't want the responsibility, and I understand that too. They don't want the responsibility of cutting a scene that you don't feel is right, as the filmmaker. I mean, I haven't experienced that, and I made a lot of movies now. They've pretty much let us do our thing.
Charles, on your films, do you prefer to, let's say, shoot many takes, or as many as you can get, so you can basically handpick the best version? Do you believe in many takes, or do you just like to rehearse a bit and then just do?
No, I like a lot of takes. I'm not shy about how many takes I'll do, I'll do a lot if I have to, I mean, and I'll just keep going. And now with digital, it's not, it's easier to do. You can keep rolling. You don't have to cut. You don't have to reload. You don't have to do that kind of shit. So, I would say do several takes usually. Like on Noel Diary, I would say I average 7 or 8 takes probably, average. But, and I can do, look, I've done 45 takes, and I've done 3. So you do both, but you do it till you feel you have it in some form, That's the thing, you learn, everybody wants their first film to be their 5th, and it's not. So you have to, like on my first movie, I knew I did a lot of takes on Irreconcilable. But again, I had a stellar DP, Billy Fraker, who, set everything up really well for me and moved quickly. That's the other thing. You got to move fast, man. You can't fuck around. You got to know what you're doing.
Many people have a misconception about Hollywood. They seem to believe, well, I'm asking for money, I will get the money, I will shop around for actors, and I want Tom Hanks, or I want Jack Nicholson, or I want Nick Nolte, and I will get him no matter what. I will say that's not the truth. And I think many times people seem to forget about the hard work and the labor and the passion that is necessary in order to really achieve something.
Yeah. Also, actors are very. It's hard to get them, man. And also they demand. Like I'm putting together a movie now. I don't have the financing yet for my movie, so but I'm packaging it with actors that I know or I've worked with before, and they've committed to it. So I have 3 actors so far, and I think I'm gonna try to have 5, and get financing. Hopefully, I'm knocking wood. But and it's a low budget movie, so you have to depend on the quality of the writing, and you really. That's the thing about having done a lot of movies. I have some relationships that I can go back to, and that people that trust me, like Justin or Sienna Miller or people like that,
What are some of the do's and don'ts when it comes to dealing with actors in your experience? What do they approve of and what do they not like at all?
I think it depends on the actor. I don't think there's a general thing you can say about it. Like some actors don't like line readings. Somebody like Steve Martin says, and Tony Randall, when I directed the first thing, The Odd Couple, it was the first thing I ever directed. I tried to explain something to Tony Randall, I remember, and he said, do it for me. And I said, well, I'm not an actor. He said, just do it for me. Do it bad and I'll do it good. And so I did it. And he said, okay, I understand what you mean. So certain actors who are very confident, like Steve Martin, you can give him line readings, anything, Other actors don't like line readings, like Diane Keaton. I could tell Diane, but you can't really, again, you could have a joke and say, emphasize this word, and she'll do it, but it'll be so awful the way she does it because it's not her, So it got to the point where, when I made 3 movies with Diane, but when I'd start to walk toward her after a take, she'd say, I know, make it funny, and I'd walk back and she would make it funny. She'd do it she never did anything the same way. But I think it depends on the actor. You have to feel it out and talk to them. A lot of actors don't want line readings. I don't know. I just try. I work a lot with a man named Larry Moss, who's a prodigious acting coach and has written books and stuff. And he helps me prepare my movies. So he helps me with the actors, talking to the actors, communicating. He'll work with the actors. So I have that because I don't, I'm not an acting coach, like I'm not a psychiatrist, but I do know how to deal with people pretty well, I think, at this point. So, I think it depends on the individual, to answer your question.
Charles, I would like to thank you for taking so much time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that. And I would like to thank you again for your contributions to the world of cinema. And I really mean that. I really love your movies and I love your work, and I hope to watch many more movies of yours down the road. And thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well.
I thought it was great. You did a great job, man.